Morning and welcome back. It is now July 3rd. Beautiful morning out here. Had some thunderstorms roll through again last night and drop a little bit of rain. My gauge in Nobleford showed 1/10 of an inch. I'm up by Barron's right now. Seems like there was maybe a little bit more here, just judging by the mud. But regardless, we'll take a look and see what things look like this week. This patch of kochia on this dryland corner here is a good example of liberty damage on kochia. You can see we did get, pretty good kill on what we did get, but you can see on some of these plants would have been quite bushy at the time that they were sprayed, and we didn't get penetration down into the lower canopy here. So these plants are going to grow back from the bottom, from these nodes down at the bottom that are still nice and green, as well as there's some smaller plants that were shadowed underneath, and those are going to come roaring back as well. Well, all these little thunder showers are kind of spoon feeding the barley along, so we are seeing, some fairly healthy looking barley anyways, although the head size is pretty small and we are starting to come into milk stage in here. So, there is going to be a crop in here. It's just going to be short and small. Well, the grasshopper apocalypse is still ongoing. You can see these guys are in here feeding like crazy. There's actually a little bit of head feeding starting to show up in here. So some of these grasshoppers are starting to feed on these heads as these kernels are filling into milk stage. So that is not very fun at all. We need to get in here, take care of these guys right away. Nice thing about scouting for grasshoppers in the morning is they're all in the upper canopy, usually trying to warm themselves. You can see here in this patch of kochia just how many grasshoppers are in here. This is just absolutely loaded with hoppers, and these are all mature winged two-striped grasshoppers now. So a lot of these guys are getting pretty close to the reproductive stage, so they're going to be laying eggs here in the next week to 2 weeks pretty much. Some of these stressed dryland peas are still trying to flower. They are filling pods, so we do have some decent pod set going on these little plants, but they are very short and close to the ground, so it might be fun trying to pick them up. But we'll see what happens. Still a few weeks away from maturity here. More grasshoppers, once again. A couple miles away, more grasshoppers. Here we have some good results of Forage. This was sprayed on Friday, so that would be 3 days ago now. So you can see we got some dead grasshoppers here, some big ones. This guy's been hollowed out by ants already. Another one here. Oh, he's not quite dead, but you'll see them act drunk and kind of sloppy first. So these guys, they're alive, but they're not really running away. We've got a bunch of dead ones here. Couple more that are running away. So these should have been jumping away, but they're obviously being affected by the Forage, so we should see mortality on them pretty quick. More grasshoppers. Grasshoppers again, in wheat this time. Managed to catch one of these green grasshoppers to show a comparison, so you might be seeing a certain number of these out in the field. These are a two-striped grasshopper, just like the normal brown ones that we see, but there is a small subset of the population is green like this. You will also occasionally see orange and even pink ones, but they are much more rare, but they are all two-stripers. More grasshoppers in Durham this time. Well, if the threshold to beat is knee-high by the 4th of July, it is July the 4th, and this corn is definitely beating it. It is over waist-high on me, and that's saying something. So that's pretty good for the 4th of July. We certainly don't always get there staging-wise. Grasshoppers in canola this time. Well, if you're sweeping canola fields and you're finding these guys in your sweep nets, these are blister beetles. This one here is kind of a flat black, but they can also be metallic black right through like a rusty orange color. So this time of the year, you'll see them in some pretty dense concentrations here and there as breeding swarms. They do feed on the flowers. There is an economic threshold for them, but it's pretty seldom that it's ever seriously a problem. I've only sprayed for maybe a handful of times. This field itself, other than the grasshoppers, isn't too terribly bad. As far as weevils and lygus goes, it is under threshold, but right here along the edge of the field, the grasshoppers are absolutely brutal in here. You can still see a lot of this dryland canola is very heavily drought stressed. It's short, it's squat, and a little spindly. You can still see we got lots of rolled over off color leaves. So it is really still suffering. That little thunderstorm we had last night has kind of alleviated a little bit of the moisture stress, but really it's not a whole lot of moisture. Once you scrape down half an inch, you can see the ground is still dry underneath. Oh, just made a field score. Found another arrowhead today, or some sort of projectile head anyways, so it looks pretty cool. Oh, more grasshoppers in canola. This time we're kind of along a grassy headland. This hay has actually been cut here now, so the grasshoppers are just fleeing into the canola for something to eat, and they're hitting it pretty hard here. It's getting a little skeletonized. Well, these grasshoppers are getting pretty desperate. Some of these, grassy patches, like this patch would normally be hayed. There isn't enough left to hay. The grass has been stripped down to just bare stems. Even the alfalfa has been completely defoliated. It is just bare stems. Well, canola up by Carmagay is looking a little different this week. The newer emerged canola that came up since we got that first rain is now about the 4-leaf stage and makes up the majority of the crop. And 10% that emerged after seeding is now beginning to flower. So pretty funny looking field. There goes West Wind Air Spray over by Barron's, spraying fungicide on canola. Well, it's been a while since we sprayed Coragen on this Durham headland here, but you can still see all the dead hoppers along the bottom of the ground here, just kind of drifted in everywhere. So pretty dramatic. The pasture beside this field has pretty much dried up and the grasshoppers have all migrated on. So I think we got control of them on this field now. This cornfield is also exceeding the 4th of July standard at being almost waist high on me. So sectioning out the stem, you can see we are right there is our tassel. It's still very, very small in there, but it is getting bigger, developing by the day. So we're about halfway up the stem now. We're probably still a couple weeks away from tasseling, but it is starting to move up in the stem. So that means if we do have another big hail event, the corn will be at a higher risk of damage. Irrigated barley is looking wonderful this week. We are into milk stage and most of these heads are filling. Barley itself is looking great. There is some disease down lower in the canopy. There continues to be spot blotch, net blotch, and a little bit of scald kind of developing down here. And it is starting to move up the canopy now here. You can see we do have spot blotch on some of these upper leaves, including the flag leaf. Now that the fall rye and a lot of the other fall cereal crops have been silaged, it is time for reseeding oats. So that's what I'm checking up on here today. A lot of these fields have been reseeded and we're just starting to see some germination of the oats here. So things are looking good. We're going to be seeing emergence out of the ground here in this spot pretty much any time now. So back to using the seed tool again. Well, I'm here in this barley field that got hailed out really severely a few weeks ago. It was so bad that we came in and picked rocks in here and thought for sure that all the barley was absolutely screwed. We actually came in and seeded new barley seed in here, and you can actually see that is just emerging here now, so it's mostly 1 to 2 leaf. But it's rapidly being left behind by the regrowth. I'm quite surprised at how well the barley is coming back. I mean, it's not going to be a great crop, but it'll be a crop of some type. Well, I'm out here in a wheat field by Fort McLeod looking at a trial with Brant King from Syngenta. And over here at these flags, we have some kochia. This was sprayed with octane a few weeks ago, and you can see that some of this kochia was twisted up pretty well, but has grown through it and has survived. Other plants looking really nice and healthy. So let's go take a look at the side that has some Tylenol. Here on the side of the field that got hit with Tylenol, you can see we did a very good job doing burn down. All the small kochia got absolutely toasted. Some of the larger ones, there is a little bit of regrowth starting to occur on them, but crop competition in the rest of the field is going to take care of that. You might just see the odd one in these thin areas. Well, I'm back to that field of young canola that got hailed into oblivion a few weeks ago, and it's actually looking pretty good now. There is the odd thin spot here and there. It definitely did thin out the plant stand a little bit, and as you can see, it's mostly just bolting, and a few are just beginning to flower. So it did knock the staging back a little bit as well, but really it's only, maybe 2 weeks behind some of the average canola in the area. So it is still looking like it has some pretty good potential. Well, down here by McGrath, you can see we are now in basically not final blooms yet, but we are coming down from full bloom in some of these dryland canola fields. They are very stressed for moisture. It's a little bit of a thin crop, but you can see we have been pretty successful in setting pods. Things are, looking not too terribly bad as far as pod set and pod development goes, so we just have to continue to monitor for insects now. Well, down by McGrath, these forage peas are finally flowering well. There's not a whole lot of pods yet. They're pretty few and far between. This crop has gotten about a foot to a foot and a half shorter in the last week, and that's due to severe lodging already. So it's going to be interesting to see how this field is to harvest. It might not be fun. Now that the lentils are for the most part flowering and podding, it's time to start taking a look at aphid counts in the lentils every week. And generally the threshold for them is somewhere between 3 and 410 sweeps, or 30 to 40 per sweep. So really there's no realistic way you can do 10 sweeps and accurately count 300 or 400 aphids. So in this case you're better off to do just a single sweep and then try to count your aphids. Okay, in this case, we're probably somewhere in the realm of 60 to 80 aphids, I would guesstimate, in one sweep. So we'll do another 9 single sweeps and kind of average things out, see how it looks, but it's looking like we might have to spray this field. For customer questions this week, I only had a couple. I got these pictures here of this unknown bug eating sunflowers, and it turned out it is sunflower beetle larvae. Control threshold on them would be about 25% defoliation. Interesting looking little guys. And this weed here kind of looks like a hairy kochia, but what it actually is hairy fleabane. Now that herbicide season is over, it is time to draw the winner for the AgroPlus and Syngenta Axial knife. This was entered into by buying Axial through AgroPlus this year. So congratulations to the winner, Paul from City Packers. Hope you enjoy it. And that'll be it for this week. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.